ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति न विभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् मनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः स्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तन्न विदुःसुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। Last evening we discussed how sadness or grief is a human problem that arises from our self-consciousness. We are conscious of ourselves as well as the conscious of the world around us. The self that I am conscious of is limited. I find myself a limited being. I find myself, for example, limited in time. I am a mortal being. I was born at a certain time. I know that I will die after some time. I am a mortal being. I am limited in my capacities, limited in capacity to know, limited in capacity to will, limited in capacity to create. These capacities are there, but limited. I feel myself one among the countless beings, very often feeling isolated from others, feeling lonely, limited, helpless, helpless. I cannot accomplish or do what I want to do. I cannot avoid what I do not want. There are many things I want, I find myself incapable of achieving them. there are many things I do not want, I find myself incapable of avoiding them. There's a sense of helplessness also is there. All of these make me sad. So sadness is the human problem. And Bhagavad Gita addresses this problem of human sadness, human grief, human unhappiness, human sorrow. Because we are evolved, because we are sensitive, because we are self-conscious, therefore this sorrow and sadness, etc. are there. As though there is a price we have to pay for being evolved beings. But as I said yesterday, it is good that we are conscious of our limitation, and therefore there is a desire to become free from those limitations. So what is the cause of this limitation? Vedanta explains that I feel a limited being. That is not a reality about myself. It is a notion or a false perception about myself that I am entertaining. We are self-conscious beings, therefore we have a perception about ourselves as to who I am, and in my perception, generally, I am a limited, inadequate being. I have perception of the world around me also, that the world is different, I am different. I am one among countless. I have perception about God also. Somebody may say, I don't accept God. There is also a perception. I accept God, but it's different from me. Maybe He is in heaven, I am here. Thus, each one of us has automatically a perception about ourselves, about the world, about God. These perceptions, these conclusions, these opinions really form the basis of our life. Whatever we do is all derived from these perceptions. So Bhagavad Gita teaches and Vedanta teaches that look, the perception you have about yourself is not the reality of yourself. You are not what you take yourself to be. You are not a mortal being. You are not a limited being. You are not a helpless creature that you take yourself to be. You are not that. And that is the cause of my sadness, really. The only cause of unhappiness in our life, as I said yesterday, is not what happens out there, not what somebody does to me also. None of them need to cause any unhappiness or sadness. Sadness or unhappiness cannot be caused unless I cooperate. Of course, the world will do what it does, like pouring salt on a wound. That's what the world does. The wound is there, they sprinkle salt on that. So painful. But understand that sprinkling salt will create pain provided there is wound. If there is no wound, doesn't matter how much salt they sprinkle. So all the world can do is sprinkle salt. But that wound is my problem. I have created that problem. If there is not there, then the world cannot affect me in terms of making me sad or unhappy. Thus Vedanta brings the attention to our own self. I am the problem, I am the solution. My present perception of myself is the problem. my false perception about myself is the problem, and my true perception is a solution. Therefore, Vedanta gives us the perception about the realities of life. What is the reality of myself? What's the reality of the world? What's the reality of God? And what's the relationship between them? This is the basic subject matter of Vedanta. This past birth and this birth and new birth, all the stuff is okay, all secondary stuff, Primary attention is, what is the reality about it? Who am I in reality? As I just said, Vedanta teaches that you are not what you take yourself to be. What's the reason? Ignorance. To illustrate that, last night we told you the story of the 10th boy. So he thinks that the 10th boy is lost. I am not the 10th boy. 10th boy is lost. That is his perception. And that's what makes him sad. That's what drives him to search for the 10th boy, work so hard, do things. No, doing things is not a problem. What makes me do, that's the problem. Doing things in life is good, good, bad, whatever it is. But when I'm doing things out of a desperation, that this has to happen, so that desperatedness is a problem. And what made these people search for the 10th man is the wrong conclusion. The 10th man is lost, I am not the 10th man. So how was the 10th man ultimately discovered? Not by action, not by searching, but by the teaching, by the knowledge that I am the 10th man. How did that knowledge come? When somebody brought you to their attention. Somebody pointed out the basic mistake that this person is making in not including himself in the counting. Whatever the reason is. Knowledge took place. I am the 10th man. The 10th man is found, isn't it? Is he found? Yes and no. Is he found? Oh, I found him. We got him. Really, he's not found because he's always there. Finding is in case of something which is not there, is always there. And still, the feeling that we get is, we have found it. Sometimes it happens. The bunch of key is right in my waist, it has been spent. And I sometimes, it goes out of my hand, I'm searching for it everywhere. All of a sudden somebody points out, hey, Swamiji is right there. Hey, I got it. We say I got it. In a way it is right because I have the say, I feel, I have the experience as though I got it. In reality, I just discover what is already there. Similarly, they did not find the 10th man because he was not lost. The knowledge took place that I am the 10th man. And therefore, what happened? The notion that I am not the 10th man went away. It is a notion or conclusion that I am not the 10th man that was the cause of their unhappiness and search. And when that notion went away, the need for search also went away. So thus, Vedanta says that this problem of sadness, which arises from a sense of limitation, is not a legitimate problem because that I am limited is not a reality about me, it is a wrong perception, a wrong conclusion, wrong opinion about me. Therefore, we need a teacher to come along and tell us, like that boy was told, you are the 10th man. Similarly also, Vedantic teacher says, you are the 10th man. You are what you are searching for. That's what Lord Krishna did. So Arjuna is grieving. There are tears in his eyes almost. His throat is choked. He is overcome with pity. Now what causes in case of Arjuna is different from what it causes us. Conditions are different. But that's what happens to us also. So first statement of Lord Krishna, in the 11th verse, in the 2nd chapter, is a very important page 5. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Lord Krishna said, Ashocha nanvashochastvam prajna vadamscha bhasase gatasuna gatasumscha nanushochandi panditaha. Sri Bhagavan said, Ashochan anvashochastvam tvam ashochan anvashochah. You are grieving for those who should not be grieved for. Meaning that your grief or sadness has no cause, no reason, no basis. Here, Arjuna, there is no basis for your grief or sadness. That one statement is enough. Prajnavadam shibhasase. And you speak words of wisdom, you talk as though you are a very wise, learned person, but your behavior is that of a ignorant person. Why do you call me like that? Why do you call me deluded? Second line says, Gata suna gata sumsya nanu shochandi panditaha. Pandita wise, do not grieve for those who are living or for those who are no longer living. Meaning, wise people do not grieve. Listen, see, you know what it said? Wise people do not grieve. Does it mean that wise people are so insensitive? Nothing happens to them? So if they do not grieve for the dead, that means if somebody dies, nothing happens to them? Are they insensitive? Is that why there is no grief? No. The lack of grief is not because of insensitivity. Lack of grief is because of sensitivity to something to which an ordinary person is not sensitive. Wise person sees that I am not what I take myself to be. Hey Arjuna, why are you grieving? So Arjuna is a representative of all of us. And what cause grief is different in different cases. To Arjuna, the situation in front of him was the cause of grief. To us, loss of job, loss of promotion, this and many things, they can cause grief. Even simple thing, you tell me some word and I become unhappy. It does not take too much for me to become sad. I'm almost ready to become sad. All I'm seeking is some kind of a justification, looks like. So what makes me sad is different from what makes other people sad, and what made Arjuna sad is not that is not important. Important to us is Arjuna was grieving. Like human being is grieving, he's sad. Lord Krishna says there is no reason for sadness. You are grieving for what? I am helpless, I am helpless, I can't do anything, I cannot do what I want to do, I cannot avoid what I do not want. I am a limited being, I am a helpless being, and therefore I am unhappy. Lord Krishna says that conclusion that you are a helpless being, you are a limited being, is not a reality about you, it is a false notion that you have because of ignorance. What's the reality? Reality is that you are in fact. So in case of Arjuna, the grief was caused because of the possibility of death of these people. So death was the cause of grief in case of Arjuna. And if you can deal with it, you can deal with anything. That's why Lord Krishna explains the nature of death. If you understand that, and even death also cannot be a cause of grief, or fear, or anxiety, then what can be? So they call it in Veda Prasama Malla Nyaya. Prasama Malla Nyaya means that you fight against the world champion. See, when there is boxing, heavyweight world boxing championship, the fellow who was the champion last year doesn't fight with everybody. He fights with the last fellow only. This chap fights with the other fellow, eliminates them, and then he is eliminated by this fellow. You need to only eliminate one fellow. It's called Prasama Malla Nyaya. Prasama Malla means what? The one who is the strongest fellow. If you eliminate him, you eliminate everybody. So death is Prasama Malla. Death is the cause of fear for everybody. Fear, anxiety and sadness. If you can deal with that, then you can deal with anything else. So Lord Krishna explains. He says to Arjuna, hey Arjuna, there never was a time when I was not. Lord Krishna says, there never was a time when I was not. Arjuna says, oh, you are God, so that may be okay with you. There never was a time when you were not. I'm something. No, there never was a time when anybody was not. Everybody was. You know, this is an interesting way of saying things. There never was a time when you were not. You know what it means? There never was a time when you were not. What does it mean? You are always there. So what does it mean?
Consciousness.
Consciousness, right? Meaning that you were never born. You see, what is birth? That somebody is not there and comes into being, that's called birth, isn't it? When it is said that never was the time when you were not, means you always were, that means you are not born. I am not born, you are not born, none of this here is born. But Arjuna says, Lord, by the time I am through with them, nobody will be around. He says, no. Na chaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayam atah param. Here Arjuna, there will not be a time when we will not be. There will not be a time when we will not be. You know, what does it mean? We will not die. What is death? You are existing and you are not. So what is now is no more there, is called death. See, what is not there and comes into being is called birth, and what is there is no more in the being is called death. So by saying that, remember that, understand that there never was a time when we were not, meaning that none of us is born. There never will be a time when we will not be, meaning we will never die. Lord Krishna, what are you talking about? Every year we celebrate your birthday. Gokulashtami we celebrate, don't we? Arjuna says, we celebrate my birthday also, and everybody's birthday we are celebrating. And I know that after some years I am not going to be. Meaning that birth and death, that I was born, I am going to die, is my experience. How can you say I never was born, I never will die? Both are right. That was birth also is right, there is no birth is also right. There will be death also is right, no death also is right. How can both be right? Let's see here. Imagine, I don't know what this is made up of, but imagine this is made of clay. This object is made of clay. This was born. Before its birth, it was a lump of clay. Then it was formed on a potter's wheel. Imagine this is a pot is made. It will die also. When it will break, it will die. So there is birth for a pot, there is death for the pot. When the pot is born and pot will die, there is something that is not born and something that will not die. What is that?
Clay.
What is it?
Clay.
Wow, fantastic. So yes, there is birth and death, and there is no birth and death also. The pot called name and form has a birth, it has a death, but the substance. So in this pot, what is the substance? Substance is clay, isn't it? Because take away the clay, there is no pot. Substance is clay. In substance, there is no birth. In substance, there is no death. Only in embodiment. The clay takes an embodiment as a pot. In embodiment, there is birth and death, but not in substance. And so also in our case. In embodiment, this body, yes, there is a birth. There is birth of the body. There is death of the body. But when the body is born and when the body dies, still something is not born. What is the substance? Here, what is substance that you are?
Soul, consciousness.
Body is not, body is what? Body is merely your costume. So thus Lord Krishna says that this body, mind, sense organ, equipment is a costume. It's like a costume. And just as an actor puts on a costume, an actor is a wealthy person, multi-millionaire, maybe a billionaire, and puts on the costume of a beggar. The beggar is born. The beggar dies. But the actor does not. Substance does not. Similarly, Atma, here it's called Atma means a self, consciousness, puts on a costume. What is that costume? This body is a costume. So you may have heard these expressions, Purusha and Prakriti, Shiva and Shakti, spirit and matter, person and personality. So what we perceive, this body, sense organs, mind, intellect, this personality, it is costume, it is matter, and it is a locus of manifestation of the self, that is consciousness. So remember this very beautiful statement on the part of Swami Vivekananda ji. He said, I am not the body having consciousness, I am consciousness having body. I am not the body having consciousness, I am consciousness having a body. Very, very beautiful. So body comes and goes. According to karma and stuff like that, the body comes and goes. But coming of the body, or birth of the body, is not the birth of the self, and death of the body is not the death of the self. The birth of the pot is not the birth of clay. The death of the pot is not the death of clay. Similarly, birth of this body, etc., is not the birth of the self. Death of the body is not the death of the self. So what are you grieving for? Death? Whose death? Oh, Bhishma, Drona, all these great people will die. Depends on what you take themselves to be. If you know that they are self, they are Atma, they are consciousness, they are limitless, that is never born, that is never die, that never dies. And really speaking, we are not grieving for anybody's death. We grieve when the death happens, but we are always grieving for ourselves. Looks like we are very self-centered people, but we grieve for ourselves. Lot of death is happening, who bothers? Every day you open newspaper, this happened in Iraq, this happened in Afghanistan, in Syria, everywhere things are happening. You turn the page. But now you find that some American people were there in Iraq and their life is in danger. Some Indian people were there and they are, then there is some problem. Then you start feeling. When do you start feeling? When you are connected. We feel happy when we are connected. We feel unhappy when we are connected. Every year in the newspaper, we see the photographs of the children who have scored the rank in the board in India. So they published the pictures of first 10 students who scored rank in the senior exam, in the high school examination. I turned the pages, okay. But one day I was looking at them, hey, I found a familiar face. Hey, this is the son of our this disciple. Now it's a different thing. Now how nice, how wonderful. I feel happy. I feel happy when I am connected. Similarly, death also. Sometimes people's home is in the street. And when you are standing on your balcony, you can see things happening on the road, on the street downstairs. Sometimes a marriage procession passes, sometimes a funeral procession also passes. You are accustomed to one day you are watching funeral procession, you find some familiar people. Hey, what happened? Hey, my friend has passed away. Then you start feeling. So understand that happiness or unhappiness happens when we are connected, not otherwise. Meaning that I am the locus of happiness and I am the locus of unhappiness, not anybody else. Meaning that I am always grieving for myself and I am always celebrating myself. Why am I grieving? Because I am going to die. Because I am at a loss when they will die. Lord Krishna says, hey Arjuna, you are limitless. You are ever full. You are well complete. There can be no loss in you, no gain in you. You are like an ocean which does not increase because the rivers bring their water. With the ocean doesn't go down if the rivers do not bring water, because ocean abides in its fullness. And so also you abide in you are fullness in nature. Nothing that happens out there can create an increase in you or can create a decrease in you. If you see that fact about yourself, the sadness or grief arises because of my taking myself to be an incomplete being, a limited being, an inadequate being. But when I see the fact that I am in fact limitless, I am not this body. Body is limited. The mind is limited. The intellect is limited. Am I the body or not? When you go to a doctor, what do we say? Doctor, my head, something is a problem with my head, my stomach, my knees, my body. Don't we say that? Very often we recognize this body as my body. I go to a therapist or a psychiatrist, what has happened to my mind? So often we recognize this mind as my mind. Is it not so? What is mine? I am not. This is my book. That means I am not the book. My car means I am not the car. Is it not so? When I say my house, am I the house? If the house is leaking, is my head leaking? No, the roof is leaking, not me. When that relationship is clear, then there is a distance between my house and myself. I know that I am not the house. I am the possessor of the house. That's called distance. What distance? Distance created by knowledge. For example, take the case of that our actor, multi-millionaire actor, wealthy actor. If he had a few too much before coming to stage, sometimes these people need that, These big people who give big concerts and performances, it causes a lot of stress because you are in front of so many people. You have to perform well, and therefore they need some help. Therefore, they help themselves with a few shots before going to stage. Not unusual at all. One day, this actor had a few too many, and therefore he came on the stage as a beggar. And what happened? Something happened to him. He flipped. He looked at himself in the mirror before coming out of the green room. He saw a beggar. I am beggar. Now this kind of a fixation came in. I am the beggar. He is miserable now. I am beggar. I am impoverished. I am poor. I have nothing. He suffers from a sense of being a beggar. For suffering from a sense of being a beggar, you need not be a beggar. You just need to think that you are a beggar, So if you are a real beggar, then also would have the same thing. Or you think you are a beggar, same effect. Similarly, for me to feel a sense of limited, I need not be limited. I just need a sense of being limited. So the sense of helplessness is created. Sense of limitedness is created. Sense of inadequacy is created. Because of what? Swami, as you say, if limitless is my nature, why do I feel limited? That is because of identification with what is limited. This body is limited, the mind is limited, the intellect is limited. I possess them. They are my costume. But just as the actor, because of identification with the costume, thinks himself a beggar, so also I, the limitless, because of identification with this limited costume, take myself to be a limited being. That I am limited is my notion and not a reality about me, but causes the same problem as though I was really limited. Like the 10th man is lost. If he was really lost, then also the same problem, or the thought that he is lost is enough. Similarly, the thought that I am limited, thought that I am inadequate, thought that I am helpless, thought that I am dependent, causes all the sadness and grief. So Lord Krishna says, hey Arjuna, if you really truly know who you are not the body possessing consciousness, you are the consciousness possessing the body. This is called Viveka discrimination. So, Lord Krishna describing the nature of the self says further, see verse number 20 on the page 6. How about reciting this verse? I chant one line, you repeat that. Huh? Okay. Or look at the word, let us take this verse. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणः न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे So revealing the reality about ourselves. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित. The self kadachit na jayate. The self is never born. Kadachit na mriyate. It never dies. Nayam bhutva bhavitavan bhuyah. It is not that it was not there and came into being. It is not there, it is there and ceased to be. Meaning that there is no birth, there is no death. Ajo nityah shashvatoyam purana. Ajah, self is birthless. Nityah, deathless. Shashvatah purana. Shashvatah, which does not undergo any change. Purana, one that is ever new. No growth, no decay. You are changeless. You are free from all changes, free from all limitations. Birth and death do not belong to you. They belong to the body, not to you. So this is the distance of the knowledge. Like that actor, because of taking himself to a beggar, is suffering from a sense of being a beggar. He is taught, hey, you are not the beggar, you are the actor. So what happens? Because of that knowledge, there is created a distance between the beggar and the actor. Distance between beggar and actor. What distance? The hand of the beggar is the hand of the actor. Where is the distance? The sound of the beggar is the sound in India. When they act as beggars, they have all kinds of background music, playback songs, lot of advantage they have. But the throat or the voice of the beggar is the voice of the actor. Where is the distance? There is no distance and still there is a distance. What's the distance? There is not the physical distance. Actor doesn't say, there is a beggar and I am actor. Distance is distance of knowledge. So the actor creates a distance with the beggar. What kind of distance? Distance of knowledge. In fact, there are two separate things. The beggar only belongs to the costume, doesn't belong to the actor. They are separate. But because of ignorance, identification, what is two is taken to be one. By knowledge, the two is recognized as two. So this is the fundamental solution Bhagavad Gita provides for the human problem of sadness. Huge. This is what we call the Paramarthika solution or the highest level of knowledge. If you have this, you need not go further in Gita. Since we don't have it inspired being told, therefore we have to study further. If this much we are told, hey, you are not this body, you are not the mind, you are not the intellect, you are the consciousness, you are the witness, you are the illuminator. The birth belongs to body, you know birth. The death belongs to body, you don't have death. All limitations belong to body. You are not limited, you are limitless. If these statements touch our heart and we see that fact, the work is done. Since that does not happen, therefore, the subsequent teaching becomes necessary. But we said yesterday, I am the problem, I am the solution. I, who has this perception or notion that I am limited, is a problem, and I, who knows myself as limitless, is a solution. That is okay, Swamiji. But still, when a death happens, there is a loss. When birth happens, there is a gain. So what about that gain and loss that is there in the Vyavaharik, in the day-to-day life? So turn the page, number 7. See the verse 27, the first verse. Let me chant, you repeat. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityuh dhruvam janma mrutasya cha tasmad pariharyerthe natvam shochitum arhasi. So you are blocking everybody. And your camera also is blocking. Jatasya hi dhruva mrityuhu dhruvam janma mrutasya cha. So now Lord Krishna is talking about the realities about life. Talked about reality about ourselves, that we are limited. Now there are certain, so if you understand that reality, no problem. Similarly, there are certain realities about life. Lord Krishna says, Jatasya hi dhruva mrityuhu. Death is certain for the one who is born. Dhruvam janma mrutasya cha. And the birth is certain for the one who dies. That also is important. Death is certain for the one who is born, and birth is certain for the one who dies. You know what it means? It means that there is only the change of costume. What we call death is giving up one costume, and birth is taking up a new costume. Later on, Lord Krishna gives an example. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grunnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani sanyati navani dehi. Lord Krishna, just as a person discards worn out garment, it takes up a new garment. Similarly, this self discards a worn out garment, takes up a new garment. Meaning that we need not agree about the person who is dead because there is nobody dies, just changes the garment. Sometimes we are concerned about what will happen. Swamiji, he was a young man, he was so promising, and he just left his body. How sad it is for you, but not for him. Because whenever a person departs from this body, he departs at his will. We are born with what we call a certain prarabdha or destiny, and when that destiny gets over, we depart from here to take up a new body. And therefore, the Jivatma, the self, his existence continues. This is a very important thing, important point that Bhagavad Gita makes. That there is no discontinuity of life. There is no loss of life. Just as science tells us that the matter there is always a conservation of matter. Matter changes the form from one form to the other, but matter never perishes. Similarly, Vedanta teaches life never perishes. It just changes embodiment. It is in one embodiment, and when the karma, prarabdha is over, takes up a new embodiment. What the new embodiment? The details are not very important. Important is there is continuity of life. It is not that the body comes to an end. Life does not come to an end. And the life or the self continues from one embodiment to the other embodiment. So Arjuna, what are you grieving for? That this person died? But dhruvam janmamrutasya, the birth is certain for the one who has died, and therefore he is not perished. There is no extinction of life. Life continues. So, and also remember that death is certain for the one who is born today or tomorrow. When the death will be, we do not know. It is going to be there someday. Forget about anybody else, about our own self also. You see, typically in the university in the olden days, when they used to teach logic, then the professor will tell the students that Socrates was man, Socrates died, therefore man is mortal. To prove logically, man is mortal and is subject to death. But everybody knows that Socrates died, right? Socrates was man, Socrates died, therefore man is mortal. So Vinoma Bhave says, hey professor, why didn't you say, I am a man, I am born, I am going to die, so I am mortal. We always assign mortality to somebody else and think that that does not touch us. But you are a man and you will die, you are mortal. Hey disciple, you are a man or you are a human being, so you are also mortal. The point is, whoever is born is someday going to die. Lord Krishna says that accept these realities of life gracefully. Graceful acceptance of the realities of life. No use fighting with the realities, no use resisting the realities, no use fighting with them, accept them gracefully. God, give me the serenity, give me the maturity to accept gracefully what I cannot change. Give me the courage to change what I can. Give me the wisdom to know the difference. So there are certain realities of life which we cannot change. There are certain laws. According to laws, the phenomena happen. These laws are not created by us, nor can we change those laws. And this one simple law is, death is certain for the one who is born. That being the case, Lord Krishna, Tat Sasmat Apariharya, the second line is important. Therefore, you should not grieve over that which cannot be altered, which cannot be changed, which is inevitable. There is no point in grieving over that which is inevitable, which you cannot change, which you do not control. We'll take up this issue also in the next class. We'll talk of Karma Yoga. But here, Lord Krishna is saying, giving a very important insight, that grief arises because we fight with realities. Grief arises because we resist, we reject, we fight with it. No, this cannot be, this cannot be, this cannot happen, should not happen. It will happen. It will happen. So graceful acceptance of what I cannot change. For example, there is a lot of grief in us on account of our past. In many people. On account of the way I was treated by the world in the past. Sometimes I find that my parents are not fair to me. They are partial to my sibling and they are cruel to me. This is child's perception anyway. Very often children think like that. So my uncle, everybody has some significant people in their life. Everybody has some significant people whose opinion is very important. Not everybody's opinion. I don't care what my neighbor thinks, I don't care what the man in the street thinks, but I care what my father thinks, what my mother thinks, what my teacher thinks, what my uncle thinks, what my boss thinks. Some people who are important in my life. Their opinion and their acceptance is very important to me. I feel comfortable and good when I am accepted by them, when I am, allowed by them, accepted by them. But as I am growing up, very often I find that these people are not fair to me. They've been unfair, they've been unjust. Thus, we are carrying a lot of what our Swami would call unconscious in our mind on account of the variety of painful or unpleasant experiences we had in the past. We are carrying that, and that also creates sadness in the present. Therefore, graceful acceptance of the past. Past has gone. There's nothing I can do about it, and therefore let me gracefully accept it. How can I accept Swamiji? Look at what my uncle did to me. Look at what my teacher did to me. Look at what my father did to me. Look at what this person did to me. How can I accept it? You accept it by forgiving them. So all the past hurt we are carrying, the one cause of our sadness is hurt, which we are carrying from the past experiences, where we thought that we were not treated in a fair manner. This our people may have treated me fairly, My father may not be partial, but I thought he was partial. A child thinks. My teacher may not have been partial, but I thought he was partial. And thus, I have been hurt by the treatment that many people give to me, and I am carrying those wounds. So once I was talking to some French people. Says, Swamiji, we have many wounds in ourselves. Everybody has. Those wounds come on account of the hurt that we have been carrying. So what is graceful acceptance? Of what? Graceful acceptance of those people who we think have hurt us. How do we accept them? By forgiving. Forgive them. How can I forgive Swamiji? Look at what this person did to me. So they teach us that look, do not simply look at the behavior of the person, look at the person behind the behavior. The behavior of the person is very hurtful. But if you look at the person behind the behavior, it's called two-step approach. One-step approach is, this fellow hurt me, I'll hurt him back. I'll take revenge. Two-step approach is that rather than responding to the behavior of the person, I look at the person behind the behavior. And I'll find that that person is in pain. That person who causes pain to me, himself or herself is in pain. Only a hurt person can cause hurt to others. Only a person in pain can cause pain to others. A happy person cannot cause pain. If you look at our own behavior also, you find, when do we sometimes hurt people? Unwittingly. Out of anger. When? Because there is some pain in me which comes out as anger, which hurts other people. Therefore, if I look at, I can bring those people in my mind and look at the person behind the behavior and see how they were also people who were hurt and unhappy themselves. To explain this, I tell the story of a friend of mine. Many years ago, when I was working, that time, this friend of mine told me his experience. He was traveling from California to JFK, a long flight, 5.5 hours. San Francisco to JFK, 5.5 hours flight. Sometimes on the East Coast, the weather is not always smooth, and therefore there was last half an hour's bumpy ride. Ride was bumpy. When bump comes, then, and before that, those days they were serving dinner and everything. Nowadays they don't give a glass of water, but those days they were serving. So you had a nice meal. and now bump comes, and therefore the food in your stomach starts turning up. Some people can tolerate that, some people cannot tolerate that. And particularly when it lands, at that everything comes up. And it is so difficult to contain that because you are throwing up. So this flight landed at JFK. As soon as the plane landed, everybody got up. They crowded the aisle, they're pulling out this bag, that bag. Even though it takes about 10 minutes for the doors to open, but still people crowd that aisle. And one fellow is trapped in that. In this, he can't go further ahead, he cannot go back. And this friend of mine who is standing there waiting for this thing to clear up, the fellow behind him, you know what happened? He threw up. And threw up on this chap, this fellow. Because he was behind, threw up. Now it was a 2.5-hour journey from JFK to New Jersey where he was living. So he had this called Abhisheka, He had this Abhisheka. And in that thing, he traveled for 2.5 hours. What a miserable, but what can you do? Can you give him a punch? Why did he do this? We know that he's helpless, isn't it? The person who threw up, not that he wanted to, he did not know what to do with his stomach. He just threw up helplessly. You don't get angry at him. It's uncomfortable, it's painful to you, but you don't get angry. You forgive him because you know that he is in pain. Similarly, whenever anybody is angry at me, at anybody, that is like throwing up. There's something inside and doesn't know how to handle it. Therefore, it comes out as anger, it comes out as aggressiveness, it comes out as hurtful behavior. Therefore, a two-step approach. Rather than responding to the behavior, respond to the person behind the behavior and recognize that this person himself, herself is in pain and therefore they treated me in this manner. In that case, our sympathy will arise for them and we will be able to forgive them. Another way of looking at the past is a thing, we have to settle the accounts with the past and present and future. Then alone mind can be quiet. So these accounts are not settled. All this stuff is there in the burden I'm carrying in my mind. Another thing, the way to look at it is, all those people who caused me some pain in the past, understand that they did not cause me the pain. The pain and pleasure is caused to me by my own karma. This is a law of karma, law of cause and effect. That whatever I am experiencing now is the result of some past action or karma that I must have performed. Then what's the role of this person? But Swami, he did this to me. He was only your own karma prompted him to behave like that. You follow? What makes a person behave like this? He doesn't behave like this with everybody. He behaved like that with you, not with everybody. What made him do that? Your own karma made him behave like that. Because you have to go through that experience because of your own karma. The poor fellow is only instrumental. What is responsible is your own karma. Therefore, let them go. Forgive them. Be kind to them. So thus, this sadness caused by hurt can be dealt with by what we call forgiveness, which arises from sympathy or compassion when we look at the people behind the behavior. So, the first section of the second chapter of Gita is a lesson in freedom from sadness. Ashochan anvashochastvam. You are grieving for that which should not be grieved for. The self doesn't deserve to be grieved for because you are limitless. The non-self doesn't lead to grief for because it is insentient. The realities don't deserve to be grieved because they are realities, you can't change them. So thus, when we gracefully accept these realities about ourselves, about the world, then that resistance is not there. Rejection is not there. It is resistance, rejection of the realities that causes conflicts and hurt and sadness. And so, tasmad apariharyarthe, the last verse that we read, here Arjuna, it is not proper for you to grieve about that which is inevitable, which cannot be changed, which you cannot control. So thus, the first section of the second chapter of Gita gives a lesson about freedom from grief. The second section gives a lesson about karma yoga. The third section gives a lesson about the wise person. You can look at the second chapter as giving primarily these three lessons. So one lesson we discussed, give them a break. And second, we'll discuss a lesson briefly on karma yoga. Third session, we'll discuss the lesson on the wise person. And if you have questions, please write down. I don't know if they have any index cards or not, but oh, there are. So please write down your questions. At the end, we'll discuss them.